It's game on. This is live with the community on the Viva Connections and SharePoint Framework bi-weekly sync. Today is August 22nd, 2024. Our last call in August. We're getting into autumn. We're getting into September. Maybe prompt-timber, everybody. In the States, it's pumpkin spice season. Holy cow, it all started today, so we're excited to be here. Let's talk about our agenda for today. We're going to get the latest updates on SharePoint Framework. We're going to talk about a whole bunch of community project updates like PNP.js, CLI for Microsoft 365, Microsoft 365 Developer Proxy, SPFx controls, VS Code extensions, and PNP Search Web Parse. So many new samples we're going to talk about together as well. And of course, everybody's favorite time, picture time. Then we're going to have two pretty cool, amazing, really awesome guys that are going to be presenting today. Chris Kent's going to be here talking about something cool in SharePoint, tips and tricks from the field. We don't know, everybody. We're as excited as you are, sitting on the edge of our seats. And then Hugo is going to be here talking about using Azure OpenAI Assistant APIs with SPFx, building advanced solution scenarios. So he's been teasing that out for the last couple of weeks, and we know that we've been getting bits and bytes of it. See what I did there? Bits and bytes. And we are excited to get the whole enchilada today. But first, let's talk about some resources that are available to each and every one of us that are on the call. We've got Microsoft Community Learning videos. This is our YouTube channel that provides you all the goodness and video format that is available in the community. So things like these community call recordings go there, but the demos go there, and many other things by the rest of the Microsoft ecosystem as well as the community. So we'll talk a little bit more about that and its name in a minute. We've also got our LinkedIn group for discussions. So if you want to collaborate with members in the community using LinkedIn, that is completely open and free for you to do that, ak.ms/community/li. We've also got those open source toolings and projects that we're going to talk about today, like the PNP.js and CLI for Microsoft 365. And of course, sample galleries. There are so many samples, thousands of samples. Well, maybe not thousands, but over 1,000 samples. And ak.ms/community/samples will give you access to all of them. They comprise things like Teams and SPFx, list formatting, and Power Platform. And you can browse and you can filter and you can find those awesome samples that you would like to learn more about. But you only need to remember one URL to make it all happen. That's ak.ms/community/home. So go there, give you access to everything. Now that YouTube channel, you may be going, wait, I don't recognize that name. I've been gone for summer. What did they change? Everything? Well, not really. It's the same Microsoft and 365 Power Platform community site you knew, or channel you knew and loved, but we renamed it to the Microsoft Community Learning Channel so that we can be a little bit more inclusive because we're an open and welcoming community. This is going to allow us to include things like Dynamics 365 and Copilot and any new technologies that come up very soon for our community. So go there if you haven't already and subscribe, ak.ms/community/YouTube. You'll be alerted to as soon as new things drop, like these community calls. Hey, speaking of community calls, you're here because you like calls, and we like them too. So be on the lookout for some of our other calls. The first is our Microsoft 365 and Power Platform call. Now, this is a Microsoft speakers call. That means that every Tuesday, you're going to hear directly from that horse's mouth, the product manager, the program manager. They're going to be sharing things about the products that we use each and every day, sometimes in new ways, sometimes previews. So you want to get that on your calendar. Now, it is on break until the 3rd of September. So we'll be back on the 3rd of September, which is just less than a couple weeks away. So be ready, get it on your calendar. I've also got the Power Platform and Office add-ins. That Power Platform was monthly, ours just yesterday, and it's already out on YouTube if you'd like to check it out. And of course, our bi-weekly sibling calls, the Microsoft 365 and Power Platform community, which is next week, and the one you're on right now, Viva Connections and SharePoint Framework. Get the invites for all these at ak.ms/community/calls. And you can also check out the meetup if you want to see the agenda for each week and be clued in there. It's a great way to keep up with who's going to be talking about what. And as you hear people talking about stuff, you may think, I got cool stuff that I want to talk about. Maybe it's a pattern, maybe it's a demo, maybe it's a utility you've created, or a cool way to utilize the technology that we're using. Well, guess what? We invite everyone to present on these calls. That's right. When I say everyone, that means you sitting there watching right now going, does he mean me? Yup, I mean you. So all you got to do is fill out this form, ak.ms/community/requests/demo. I know, rolls right off the tongue, and we will get back to you and schedule you for an upcoming call. And if you need a buddy, let us know. We can fill someone in with you, and you'll work together on the presentation and even present together. So if it's your first time and you're a little nervous, don't sweat it. We're here to protect and cover you. All right. Now, as you're also seeing some of those samples, you may be like, those are cool. I'd love to learn how to better use them. Maybe I want to submit one. Well, the Sharing is Caring program is here to cover you. We just had a session earlier this week on Monday, so we're getting that new date scheduled probably for late September after the Power Platform Conference, as I know a lot of folks will be there. But this program is an initiative that provides hands-on guidance, and that means that we're going to walk through an initiative together. We are going to do things like submit a pull request into GitHub, and you might be going, what's a pull request? Well, guess what? You're going to find out there what it is, but it's the gateway to contributions in the community. It is a safe space. It's live. We're not recording it, so you feel free to ask any and all questions that you'd like. Don't hesitate to join. It's absolutely free, and you're going to collaborate with other members of the community and learn together. So get signed up. Keep an eye out at ak.ms/sharingiscaring. We'll let you know as soon as the new dates drop, which will be very, very soon in the next couple of days, and we look forward to seeing you there. And then, of course, when you do submit a sample or you contribute to the community in a variety of ways, we're going to recognize you, and that's where our recognition program comes in. This is a program that is powered by Credly, giving you those official and accredited badges. Those can go on your LinkedIn profile. They can go on your resume, your blog. You can put them on the fridge. I send mine to my mom. She's very proud. I tell you, I'm so happy. And it also shows your managers and or your clients that you're making a difference in the community. So don't hesitate to sign up. Absolutely free. ak.ms/community/recognition. And guess what? We've got some new badges. What are those? Prompt Pro, Prompt Timber, Promptober. We've got the Prompt Pro, which is available all year long for those Copilot prompts and those P&P Power Platform prompts. And of course, those special edition for Prompt Timber and Promptober only available in September and October. So get those prompt fingers ready to go. Start thinking about what you can prompt and get it into the repo. If you're not sure how, again, join Sharing is Caring. Okay, let's jump over to Vesa about some SharePoint Framework news.
Cool. Few updates on the Microsoft side. So SharePoint Framework 1.20 public preview was released, I think yesterday, if I remember correctly, when I pushed it out. No, day before. Anyway, Tuesday, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, this week, it's now available. So if you're using the hashtag tag next, or you're explicitly installing 1.20 beta, you will get that available. Now, if you go to the following slide, we're calling out to two major things which are within SPFx 1.20. So first of all, we extended the data visualization components for Viva Connection, and that's actually now including bar chart, a donut, and a pie. Where's our pie? Pie is missing from the list. I don't know why. And then the second really cool thing was also the bring your own quick view. And that means that you are able to use React or JavaScript or HTML for the quick views for the ACEs. And this is really intended to kind of expose the new opportunities for the cards, which is not going to replace web parts, but the cards is a new concept in SPFx, and we keep on investing there as well. And you will see actually these cards in multiple new locations pretty soon as well. Now, if you go to the following slide, this is more a recap on where we are with SPFx. So 1.19 is still the GA version of everything, and 1.20 beta was released this week. Within 1.5 weeks, the release candidate will come out, and then GA within the early September, mid-September. So that is coming out pretty soon. There's a lot of additional investment, not only on Viva Connection, also on the SharePoint side on the pipeline. So we're talking about card web part, for example, for SharePoint, which means that you can expose those custom cards anywhere within a SharePoint, including the teams, if you're servicing SharePoint pages over there. So you have more flexibility of using those cards. We're also looking into SPFx-powered SP hosted apps, so replacement for SharePoint hosted add-ins with SPFx. And then there's a SharePoint Framework and Copilot integration scenarios. A lot of stuff on that one in the pipeline as well. But more on all of that as we get stuff ready, and we're ready to publish those. We will keep on then communicating and releasing videos and samples as we get stuff moving. But that's a quick update from my side, from the engineering side of the house on SPFx. Let's move into the individual projects.
Awesome. Thank you, Vesa. I'm excited. You had me at donuts and pie. So I say
Exactly.
listening after
Priorities.
that.
There
So
we go.
That's exactly. Yeah. Got to get it right. All right. Get into those open source projects. We're going to start with Copilot prompts. I had mentioned that we have a dedicated repo, a couple of them, in fact, and one of them is the Copilot prompts. You can get access to that at ak.ms/pnp-prompt-library. These are all those Copilot opportunities. So Microsoft 365 and other opportunities to use Copilot is a little bit more of our overarching generic one. And we want to also say thank you to Andrew for the prompt of the week. And so you put in your context and you ask, reorganize the previous information into the format of position, problem, possibilities, and proposal. So that's pretty cool. Give it the opportunity to help you define what that will look like and reorganize some of your context and ideas. So Andrew, thank you so much. You could almost say that we're jolly for your prompt. See what I did there? All right. Let's move into Microsoft 365 Learning Pathways. I don't see Julie, so we will talk about this. Version 5 updates has some technical updates around SPFx and PnP.js. H2O has a UI update. There's some accessibility updates, search box, custom analytics, webhook, and bug fixes. You can access the beta today at GitHub, so go to that GitHub URL, and you can download the beta and help test. So definitely get involved there. It is going to be in beta till August 30th, going V5 GA in September, so we're excited for that. And as we move into PnP.js, version 4.4.0 was released on August 12th, so it includes some documentation updates, update return types from shares, and adds the ability to pass in retrieve properties to get all children as tree. Still version 3 support, be maintained for any bugs in the foreseeable future, like six-ish months. And the V3 nightly builds have stopped. But you can always learn more at ak.ms/pnp.js. Now let's talk about some CLI with Gary.
Thanks, David. Yes, so new beta release of CLI for Microsoft 365. So this is version 8.1.0. We have new commands for Microsoft Entra, SharePoint Embedded, SharePoint Online, and Microsoft Teams. So we've got lots of new updates. A reminder that this is version 8. So if you are upgrading from previous versions, from the version 7, there are a couple of breaking changes that we need to make you aware of. So make sure that you check out the upgrade guide, which you can access from the main CLI for Microsoft 365 website. We've got it on the left-hand menu, so it's really visible. You cannot miss it. If you want to get information on all of the new features and also enhancements and bug fixes which come with every release of CLI for Microsoft 365, you can check out the release notes, aka.ms/CLI-M365/notes. You'll get all the details there. If you want to try out this new beta, then you can use the @beta tags on NPM and Docker as well to run the latest versions, check them out, and like I say, see what changes you might need to make if you are upgrading your scripts. If you have any questions about CLI, how to get started, you're working on a script, the best place to ask those questions is on our community Discord. You can find the join link at aka.ms/CLI-M365/Discord. And that's it for CLI. On to proxy. So dev proxy, we don't have a new release. We're still at the 0.19.1 release, although we do have 0.20 release due for next week. So if you're new to dev proxy, don't know what it is, dev proxy is a command line tool for simulating API errors, behaviors, responses. So if you're doing anything with APIs, which most people are, that's where you're going to get your data from, and you want to make sure that your applications are robust and resilient and they stand up to services going down, like getting throttling or any other issues, you can use proxy to simulate that really, really easily. If you go to aka.ms/devproxy, check out a get started tutorial where you can go through and use proxy within like 5 minutes, just get it set up and running, and then go from there. If you have any feedback, questions, please let us know. We are always after feedback and putting in new features all of the time. David, back to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Gary. Great work there, everybody. Really love to see all the advancements. All right, usable, reusable. Hey, they're usable and reusable SPFx controls with Alex.
Yep, usable, reusable. So we released new versions last week, 3.19 for React controls and 3.18 for React property controls. The main change here is full support for SPFx 1.19 with all the bugs fixed related to Webpack bump from 4 to 5 in SPFx. So everything is working correctly right now. There are also additional enhancements to dynamic form, people picker, site picker, and additional bug fixes in React controls. And we are aiming for the next version when 1.20 SPFx will be released as well. And thank you to all our contributors. Back to you, David.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. Next up is SharePoint Framework Toolkit for VS Code. So Adam is out on vacation, but had some updates. New minor release 3.4.1. New extension settings to customize your account and tenant views by Guido. Awesome job, Guido. Thank you so much. Small improvements in account and tenant views. So there's still some good issues in there for those that want to contribute. Check it out at aka.ms/viva/VS Code. This extension is very, very cool in helping you start learning and setting up your SPFX solutions and learning about it as well. I know Adam is integrated Copilot, so there's some really, really cool things here. And I know we're working on a new badge just specifically for the toolkit. So get your contributions in. They'll all be retroactively rewarded and issued, so don't think you got to wait for that to come out before you contribute. Start today. Let's move into PnP Modern Search with Casper, our friendly maintainer.
Thank you. Well, we're planning a preview build next week, so I guess we will have a new version available when we see each other again in 14 days. And we've had some updates to the documentation and also an update to some of the layouts. The guy you see in the bottom there, he pointed out a few bugs or features that was missing. And we got that fixed and ready in the layouts repository. So it's all there for your convenience. And I hope we have a new build next time we see each other. Thank you. Back to you, David.
Awesome. Thank you, Casper, and thank you, Steve, for those contributions as well. Okay, let's move into some PnP SPFX samples with the one and only Chef Hugo.
Woo! All right, so we have SPFX web part samples and extensions that are available to you to download and learn from them. We have an update to the enhanced page property by Ari Gunawan. We have a new Dataverse client by Marcin. We have a updated anniversary web part. And finally, Kinga has brought us the new external API call tracking with application insights, which is part of a series of articles. I hope that we'll get to see associated web parts with that series. We welcome all your contributions. We love your samples, and please keep them coming. Back to you, David.
Awesome. Thank you, Hugo. Now, the question is, on the anniversary of the anniversary web part, are we going to celebrate the anniversary? I think it's like anniversary-eption. Anyways, all right, let's talk about some aces, everybody. Anoop, tell me more.
Thank you, David. So we have a couple of new samples from VESA and the Microsoft team in the ACES repository. So these are related to the 1.20 beta version of SPFX that was released yesterday, day before yesterday, Tuesday, sometime this week, like this I said. So the two new samples are related to the chart ACES. So that's the data visualization options, and the other one is the HTML quick views. So these two, like I said, are the new features in the 1.20 release. So yeah, do take a look at these samples. You can find them on aka.ms/SPFX-ACES. So back to you, David.
Excellent. Thank you. So, that Vesa name sounds familiar. I should have sent an email. Dear Vesa, thank you for your contributions. You are awesome. All right, let's move into what time? Pick shoot time. So get those cameras turned on so we can see those fantastic faces. We got a wide open room here available for us. I'm just sitting by myself, all by myself, all by my lonesome. All right, there we go. Let me close the chat and get Camtasia going here. Very good. Out of the way. All right, Vesta's showing us how it's done. Got some more room. Got some dynamically ready and opening rows there, everybody. So there's still some room. Got some time. Just a couple minutes. Well, not quite a couple minutes. More like a few seconds. There we go. There's Hugo. He's dancing all around. Excellent. I think I see Levi and Nick. There's Nick on the bottom. Awesome. Noops. All right, Natalie, excellent. Okay, we'll give it just another second, and then we'll get it going. All right. 3, 2, 1, go crazy, everybody. Woo! Yeah, looking fantastic. Great to see everybody today. I know lots are still on vacation, so we're getting to the end of summer, but it's wonderful to see everybody. Thank you all for attending and doing what you do in the community. You are rocking it out. Okay, all right. Well, let's get back to our regularly scheduled What was that? What was that? Oh, Chris Kent is coming up. Yeah, I know. I hope he's got horses too. Okay, yeah. But Chris is here. SharePoint Framework tips and tricks from the field, from the pastures, from the stables. Chris, you ready?
Can you hear me?
I can. You on an Xbox headset again today?
Yep. That guy was going to fix that. All right. All right, here we go. Assume you can see my screen as well.
Yep, looks great.
Yep. Yeah. All right, then. Well, let's get started. I'm Chris, and we're going to talk about some exciting things. There are 0 horses in this presentation, though, so in your face, David. All right, let's move over, though. Aww. Instead, we have the mockingbirds. That's right. So the mockingbirds are back. So you may recall we showed off the mockingbirds back in January, something along those lines. And at that time, we created a chat bot using PVA, which is now Copilot Studio, right, which mocked you. Later, we created a birdalizer, which added ugly beaks to everyone's ugly faces, and that was exciting. Woo woo! But now, the mockingbirds want to take it to the next level, right? So they saw some of Hugo's demos, some of the things he's been doing with speech and some of the speech synthesis and so on. So they decided to look into that themselves, as birds do. It naturally makes sense. So let's take a look. So they've written an app, right? And it's over here on the workbench. Well, it will be. Let's add it to the workbench. I decided to use this icon since Twitter's not using it anymore. All right. There we go. So now we've got this guy. This is our beautiful app. I just realized I didn't share audio, though. So let's see. What's the magic way to share audio? Anybody remember?
It's up in the top. You can reshare if you want, but it's in the little toolbar when you're on the sharing little thing that's hovering over. Yeah.
Up here, this little thingy.
Yeah, we can't see it. Now we just look like you're clicking to nowhere. Yeah. But you see it.
Well, maybe I am. All right, now I shared my sound. That's great. So now the idea here is I've got a little microphone, right? I can click this microphone and I can talk. Let's say I have 14 trucks in a, room. Okay. All right. It's one of those things. Maybe you should plan that out, but I didn't, right? So now we see that it captured that, right? It transcribed. You can see I have 14 trucks and apparently AI don't know room. Perfect. And then we can ask the mockingbirds to say that back to us. Now I'm hoping that annoying little voice came through.
It did not, but we trust you.
Did not. Yes. I think you should probably reshare, I guess.
Let me reshare because we got to hear it. It's very important.
Well, and make sure that your output speaker on your operating system is to your headset as well. Otherwise, they need to be in sync, or we won't hear it. Down on a little system tray. I think you're using speakers, right? Because I heard myself. So.
I don't know what I'm doing. All right, let's try that again. I don't know what you're talking about with the output to the speakers and all that. So.
Oh, you're on a Mac. Yeah, sorry, I forgot. You're on your own.
I have 14 trucks and I don't know room.
We did hear that.
I'm Chris Kent and I say, I have 14 trucks and I don't know room.
Get to hear a lovely voice here if you're not hearing it. The idea is it's a lovely sped up voice, right? We've got the little mockingbirds. They mock whatever you say here, right? You can write it as well, right? We can say like, Vesa is a special angel, right? Angle, apparently. Angel. There we go.
I'm Chris Kent and I say, Visa is a special angel. Pathetic.
Apparently. Well, that's right. So there you go. So the idea here is we can do some really cool stuff, right? That's great. It's in the workbench. Wow, wow, wow. I made the SPFx web part. Everyone's happy. But then they're like, yeah, but like this should go in Teams, right? So no problem, right? We know that SPFx can be launched into Teams. The problem with some of that, right, is if you do some of the automatic deployment, it's going to generate a manifest for you. It's going to generate that. And we need device permissions, right? We have to be able to access the microphone. to be able to get some of that stuff. And we have to be able to test that, so it's extra fun. All right, so let's take a look at the code, and then we're going to take a look at solving that problem with Teams. All right, let's see. Where's the old code? Whoop, whoop. There it is. All right, here we go. So if we come back over here, I'm just going to quickly go over the code, and then I'm going to talk about a couple of things we need to take a look at here. So I'm just pulling in the Microsoft Cognitive Services Speech SDK. I'm using the free plan. It gives me like 5 hours of audio a month. Plenty for development. I just spun it up in Azure, and all I really needed to know was my API key and the region, which I have then shoved into a settings document, which I'm not showing. This is my settings sample, right? This is what it looks like, though. It's just a JSON file. That's what this thing is with my secret API key you may not know, right? And so on. But we like to use this technique here, and we have like a little NPM script that Copilot can do it, right? Oh, that's a good point. There are horses. Dang it, I said there'd be no horses. What have I done? All right. Well, either way. But you can hot swap between environments and APIs and so on by using these settings type things. That's what I'm doing here. Then I just read those in. So that's it. So in my web part, I'm just going to really quickly go over this, and then you can take a look at the code later. This is how easy it is to get set up with the Speech SDK, right? I just pass in my region, I pass in my API key, and I say it's English, and I say what voice I want. And there we go. There we go. Those are free sound effects. We don't need David's sound effects. We got my own. All right. And then we take all that, we pass that down into the microphone. All right. So we've got our microphone here. And again, I'm not going to go over a whole lot of this. The main point of this is that everything's using a hook, right? So it's using this speech hook. So we got the listening, displaying, we got some actions. And that allows me to do very easy things like when I come down here to handle record, I can just say, hey, go transcribe it, right? I'll wait till you're done with transcribing it. And I can do the same kind of thing here when I say handle the playing, right? All I'm going to do is I'm going to say, go speak it. And I give you this lovely thing here, right? And then I can make sure to mock you extra. That's always nice. And so that works great, right? And so then we can see how does that actually happen here. And this is where the fancy code that I stole from Hugo is. All right, so we've got this idea that we come in here and all we have to do is just transcribe. Is we're going to grab this microphone and we're going to say, hey, you got to recognize that. And then we launch it off. And we say, hey, when you're done, give us back that text. Wow. You know, and that's pretty cool. And then when you come down here, we have the idea of playing it. The main thing you want to note here is that I'm playing it with this exciting stuff. This looks like camel, but it's not. It's SAML. So, but the idea is here I can just pass by escape text in here. So this is the text that I've already gotten back or they've entered. All right, and I'm just saying, hey, I want it to be real fast. I want it to be real high pitched because these are birds. And I really like that I can pass a style in. And in this case, I'm passing the unfriendly style. I really like that that's an option. So if you're interested in what voices are available and what styles are available and how to configure all this stuff, there is a voice studio. So when you go to set up your free speech SDK, your speech in Azure, right there it'll say launch voice studio. When you launch that, depending on your region, you've got a bunch of options for voices and styles and pitches, and you can configure all those there, and then just copy that sample out. Okay, so moving on. That's the exciting code. Again, you can check that out because the point here is not necessarily all of this, but we can come back and take a look what we have to do. So if I want this in Teams, right, and I already mentioned that I need to have my own manifest. So I've gone ahead and created a manifest here for that. All right, so this is available. If you go to the SPFx documentation website, they've got all the information you need here. I've got my bot in here. I've got some other tabs in here. Again, another reason why you might want to do a custom manifest if you've got multiple tabs, not just your SPFx app, right? So I've got the microphone tab, and the key point here is that I'm loading it from my site collection app catalog, right, for the Teams login, and then I'm also redirecting to that same place, right? And then I have my component ID. That's that web part GUID. You just copy that out and you replace that out here. Again, if you go to the SPFx documentation site, they've got a guide there with the little placeholders to swap out. And then make sure that when you do that, you also include this guy down here, this web application info. Again, you just copy that directly off the website. You don't need to memorize that, but that's what allows that authentication to happen. And this is the key one right here, device permissions media, right? That's what's going to allow me to access the microphone should I request it. Okay, so there we go. Now I've got a beautiful manifest. Wow, 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 wow. right? And if we want to put that in Teams, we can, right? We can, well, actually, I'm getting ahead of myself because I haven't actually served this thing, right? So I'm serving it here, but let's come back and take a look at a couple things, and then we're going to take a look at how that shows up in Teams and what we can do with it. So one of the things I've got, right, is I was in the browser, I was on the workbench, but I need to test team-specific stuff, right? So if we look in the web part, you can see that there, by default, you get this interesting environment message, right? So this came just with the default scaffolding, right? You can see it's inspecting the Teams.js context, right, to find out where you're running. There's some additional things you can get off of there, right? So if we'll get that back in here. We'll come back down here. If we were to want to inspect a little further, right, we could definitely say context.app.host, right, .client type. And we say, you know, does it equal one of these things? So we can find out, hey, I'm specifically running an iOS, right? I'm on the iPad, stuff like that. So if you really need to know details about where you are, right? You want to see if you're on old teams or new teams, you can do all that here. So that's important. But one of the things I wanted to mention here, you'll find this little note on the website saying, hey, the version of Teams.js you have is not the version you will have when you're running inside Teams necessarily, right? So it's a little bit weird. So you'll see that the package that's installed by default is running Teams.js 2.12, but the latest version is, or not the latest version, the version that you'll find elsewhere, right, when you actually run it is 2.22. Why does that matter? Well, it matters because sometimes there are certain like beta methods or other things you might want to call. For instance, I happen to be aware because I was searching for it, right? I would like, hey, surely there's a has permission and request permission, right? Endpoints. There are, but they were introduced later. And so they are not going to show up for you in SPFx. You're going to get errors if you try and access them, even though they are technically there when they get loaded on the page. So what? So here's how we handle that. So you can just extend the types, right? So one of the things, I've got this little permission stuff here, right? You can see I have this request permission with that request permission on there. And if we try and see it, nah, that doesn't exist, right? And same with has permission, does not exist. So we can help that out. So we can create this little file here, which I'm going to uncomment so that it works. Right, and what we're doing is we're just extending the definition of the types. So we're not doing anything. We're not adding anything to Teams.js. We're just saying, hey, by the way, these are going to exist. So go check them out, right? And then just for me, I've linked to the documentation so I can find them. Now, the important thing to note is if you do this, make sure you include that import, because if you don't, it's going to replace the whole thing, and that's lame. But now if you come back here, now you can see, I've got has permission, I've got request permission are available. I can call them. And that's great. So now I can start testing those things out. Again, those don't make sense outside of Teams, though. So let's get into Teams. And let's also save that before I forget. Okay. So if we get into Teams real quick, by getting our manifest, one of the things I have got to do here is get this served up. So one of the things you can serve, sorry, let me back up. If you wanted to show it in Teams, and we did this in January, if you want to see that very specifically with the gulp serve command, all you need to do is pack everything up with a local serve, right? So the standard serve right here, the port 4321, and you're just going to pack everything up. So let's pack that stuff up. And in fact, I say pack it up, but let's actually make it packable by going to the package.json, and I'm just going to add a script here, right, which I'm going to call pack, right? And we'll say gulp clean. And you don't need to say --ship, but if you don't, then it's going to tell it to debug, and that's annoying. Right, and then we're going to say gulp bundle ship, and I'm just running multiple commands by putting this ampersand in between them. Right, and there we go. And I'm going to add another one for pack local, right, which, hey, look, it figured it out, which is pretty much everything like that, but no ship. Bye, ship. Right, that's it. So this is because I also am a lazy developer. Hugo's not the only one. Right, and I don't like to write those every time, and I'll forget my clean all the time. So now I can just say npm run pack local, right? And what that does is it's going to go clean it, it's going to bundle it, it's going to pack it up for me. It's real nice, right? Woo, woo, woo. So there we go, and we can find out that I apparently, I left that host client type in, silly me. Okay, so that's great. But what if I want to serve this and I want to see it on my phone, right? Or I want to go elsewhere. If that's all running off my local host, even if I've got a deployed app, right, that's pointed at my local host, the phone, right, your native apps are never going to be able to load those, right? They're not going to load from localhost. They just won't. So luckily, VS Code has you covered, right? So one of the things you can do is you can serve this thing and switch it a little bit. So if we go to my serve.json, instead of port 4321, I can set this to 443, right? Because I want to do HTTPS directly, and I can create a port. So I'm going to forward a port. So this is using something called dev tunnels behind the scenes. It's just integrated directly into VS Code. So if you've done something with like ngrok, or you've done something with Cloudflare before, any of those types of tools, those are all available, and there's some guides on how to make those work. So if you're already using those, that's great, but you don't need to use those because you just need a GitHub account and port forwarding here. So I'm going to say 4321, right, Visual Code. I will give that a moment here. Now, I've already done this once, so it didn't prompt me with a bunch of stuff, but let's take a look at what those prompts look like briefly over here. Right, so it's going to tell you, hey, you got to sign in with GitHub again, right? You say, yeah, sure. You hit allow. It's going to pop up. And if you've already signed in before, it's just going to say additional permissions. Otherwise, it's going to list a few things. This is, things like being able to see your repos, log you in, so on. Just review those permissions, and if you're comfortable, move on. And then, of course, you're going to see another one here where you're going to authorize those dev tunnels. All right, there you go. Very exciting. And then if you keep those on private, before you can use those, you have to open those in a browser and authorize them. So I'm going to recommend you don't keep them on private for now. That could be very important, right, if you're doing something like using these for, say, a web service, right? So these are a fantastic way. If you've got a web service that's running locally and you want to debug it against it with your SPFx web part, right, you can't call from the web part to localhost. It's going to freak out on you and say, yeah, you can't make that call, but you can set up a forwarded port here with the dev tunnel, and you can do that real easy, and you just set up this kind of privacy here. Wow. So again, there are guides for all that. It's built into VS Code, so that's great. And we'll come back here. But once you've built that, we'll take a look at just this so I don't have to show you since I'm running out of time here. When you deploy with that in there, we'll show you where you put this. You're going to see this when you deploy. This is what you want, right? This means it's going to be loading all of your assets and all your bundle, all that stuff from this location. And that's going to make it available all over the place. And this is just forwarding things to localhost. Ooh, fancy. So let's come back here and take a look at that. So all we have to add here is host name. Got a host name, and that is going to be this guy. So let's copy that. Let's paste that in. Let's get rid of the HTTPS part, though. We don't need that. All right, there we go. So we've pasted our host name in there, and by doing that, and we run that pack local, that's what's going to allow you to then deploy the app catalog, which I have already done just for time. So we're going to skip that, but the idea is if I take my manifest, now that it's pointed over there, and I go to the Finder, let's get the this guy. So I've just thrown some icons in there, right? That I made is very, very pretty. And then I have my manifest. Now the key to making a Teams manifest is to directly do this. Don't do this on a folder, right? They have to be directly in the folder. On a Mac, you can say compress. On Windows, you say send to zip archive, right? It is just a simple zip. You can name it whatever you want. Doesn't matter. It's just going to be inspected by Teams. So if we head over to Teams, let's see, where's Teams? There's Teams. Let's scream Teams on over. Come here, Teams. All right, we come down to our apps. Say manager apps. I'm going to sideload an app, so you have to have the permission to sideload an app. I'm in my dev tenant, so I do. A little custom app, my archive right there. Boom, microphone. Oh, great. All right, so this is all coming from that manifest that I put together. We'll just hit add here, and we'll see if it pops up. You could do it. All right. So there's our chatbot we built before, right? And now if we go over to microphone, it will fail because we're not actually serving it. So let's go serve it. By the way, if you see this, this is just a side note. Object is your error. This is so friendly, right? This almost definitely means your web part strings are not what they expect, right? So it's probably coming back in like an ngrok, whatever. It's that permission page is sending HTML back instead of what it expects. This is what it'll get. So if you see object, probably you're not loading from the right location. Okay. Let's come back here. Let's actually serve this thing. So I'm going to serve this. I'm going to serve it with fast serve because then I don't have to change any of these things. So if you haven't used fast serve, it is awesome. And let's pull that up real quick. So fast serve is by Sergey Sergeyev, right? So he's built this thing. I use this on every SPFx project I do, so I highly recommend it. You just install it globally, and then you run it locally in your project, and it will add a few things. And one of the things it adds is the ability to auto reload, so a hot reload as you're saving. It also makes things a lot faster when you're doing it. It's wonderful. Okay, and it makes this all possible as well. So I'm going to run npm run serve, which is the fast serve command. All right, so I'm running that. Running on my host, right? So I've got my port here. Now, a couple things to note with the port is you need to make sure, and this one drove me crazy, it's HTTP by default. So you have to turn it to HTTPS for this to work. And your port visibility, again, is private if you want to log in with the browser, but if you just switch to public, then you just say, yeah, that's great. I'm not doing anything sensitive here. I'm fine with that, right? So there we go. So now I should be able to go into my Teams. That's the one. Now let's try and refresh this guy. Reload the app. Aha! So that just loaded over that spot, right? And it should work for us. Let's see. Yep, there we go. So we can see those are those device permissions, right? So we already put in for Teams. So now we can see, hey, in Teams, it's actually asking for those permissions, right? So we're going to allow that. Hey, Teams, how you doing? There we go. That's wonderful, right? Okay, so now, and the last little part of the demo here is I want to show you on the phone. So let's actually take this over and screen mirror. All righty. See all that? So now let's refresh. That same thing going on. Drag down to refresh. And now, aha, look at that. So this is running from my local host. This is me screen mirroring my iPhone, right? So I'm able to test directly in Teams mobile. You can see that I have this click to grant permissions and requesting permissions. Pretty awesome, right? So this really makes this great. So it's going to request permissions. Again, I'm going to go ahead and swap out of this for now just so we can jump back to the main thing and I can wrap it up. Yes, I do need to charge my phone. Good point. All right. So there we go. That's what I wanted to show. We'll make sure I gave Hugo like 5 minutes. You're welcome, Hugo. Last thing I wanted to... I lost my PowerPoint. So that's fine. It was just a review of this, which is this guy here, which I'll just show for the video. Boom! In everyone's favorite way to see it in not presenter mode. Okay, and that's it for me. We'll let Hugo take over. Okay.
Very nice, Chris. Very nice. Hugo volunteered as tribute to die for your demo, to kill his demo. So excellent. Thank you. This is super, super cool. Everybody loved it. I guarantee there's going to be questions. And maybe you could get this up into a repo for everybody to have access to at some point soon. Would be pretty slick. I'll take silence as an agreement. Yes. Okay. So
the whole thing in the SPFx web part samples. So I'll be putting a pull request soon.
Awesome. Okay, now without delay, let's move into Hugo using Azure OpenAI Assistant APIs with SPFx in building advanced solution scenarios. Hugo, take it away.
Woo-hoo. All right. You know the cool thing about having a coworker that's also presenting, and without coordinating on what we're presenting, is there's opportunities for a lot of the same code to be presented, but it'll be fine. And the other amazing thing, by the way, just so you know, I attended a stand-up meeting less than 2 hours ago where Chris was saying he hadn't figured out how to get the microphone working in mobile devices. So way to go, Chris. This is a pleasant surprise. All right. So this is part 3 of trying to do this demo. Today, what we're going to show you is a web part that is using Azure OpenAI and Assistants API to actually give you a chatbot that can do some pretty cool stuff. So let's do a demo. Whoop, there you go. All right, so this is my little web part assistant, and you can see here that what I did is I made it available for you to put in the API keys in the configuration. Now, I really don't like doing that in production, by the way. I would normally not put API keys hard-coded or anything like that, or are available through through a property, I would probably use to tenant storage or a key vault or something fun like that. But for the purpose of demo, we are doing this. All right, and we don't need to say my password. And so this is my assistant, and I can say, you know, what do you know about mockingbirds? I think mockingbirds is 2 words. And you'll notice it's actually pretty quick. It's a lot quicker than the experience you have when you're not using streaming. And that's because what it does is as soon as it figures out the first word that it's going to respond to you, it doesn't actually know what the next word is going to be. It just sends the first word, and then it uses probability to figure out what the next word is going to be. And so that allows us to have an experience that is very responsive and very fast. Now, the other cool thing about using the Assistant API is that I can continue conversations. So let's see here. What color are they? Now, it knows that I'm referring to the previous conversation. We'll see, of course, now, because I just talked about how fast it was, it's going to be slow for me, but we'll see what happens. No worries. Come on. There you go. And by the way, my assistant is called a smart assistant. So you may notice it's a little sassy when it responds back, and that's fine. But the other thing that we've added, and that's the code that Chris just demonstrated, is the ability to use voice. And I'll just do the same demonstration here, just to show that I'm just as cool as Chris. Are there other species of animal that are mockingbirds? Doesn't really make sense, but so there you go, right? And the other thing that I can do, hopefully I shared my audio, is I can get it to read automatically for me. Hey, can you name some cool bird names for mockingbird thingies? And like Chris, I didn't prepare my prompts. So there you go. Those are cool names, right?
Sure. Here comes the musical troupe of the bird world. 1. Northern Mockingbird, *, Mimus polyglottos, *, the classic rock star of the group.
I'll refresh the page.
2.
Because I have not implemented the stop speaking button. Now there's another thing that, and I've demonstrated this before, but there's another thing that we didn't get to talk about, is the concept that this is just a base assistant. There's something else I can do with these assistants. I can actually extend the functionality by adding functions. And I can also extend with logic apps. So I can write a cool logic app in Azure, and I can get it to call it, or I can just write some JavaScript function and tell it that it needs to call it. And this is where I'm going to say, hey, what's the weather like in Barrie, Ontario? So there you go, right? It went live to get the weather. Now, if you're not aware or you're not familiar with what large language models are doing, they're not up to date on anything, right? The language model that I'm using now stopped understanding about the world in 2023. That's when they took a snapshot of all the data they wanted it to train it, and it doesn't know about anything that's happening. So if I asked it, who won the Super Bowl or who won the Olympics, it would not know about that. That's where you can use an approach which is called grounding and RAG patterns, which is retrieval augmented generation. I think I'm horrible with acronyms. What I'm able to do is I'm able to say, hey, I know you don't know about the weather right now. I know you don't know about searching the internet or what's happening on the internet right now, but I'll give you a function that allows you to call the weather. And I'll give you a function that allows you to search the internet. And you could also, since we're in SharePoint, you could also say, hey, why don't you go search my documents and give me information about my document, right? The possibilities here are endless. And when I'm not going to have time to show you the code part that does the extension of this, but when you look at the sample, you'll see that I've made it so that you can plug in any function that you want to call. And it's super easy to do so. But now let's switch back to the presentation. And I don't see comments. So if anybody's got comments, Chris or Dave, feel free to interrupt me. All right, so again, this is based on the Azure OpenAI Assistants. And Azure OpenAI Assistants is based on these 4 entities: assistants, threads, messages, and runs. We've presented about assistants in a previous call. It's basically the configuration or the personality of your assistant. So all the tools, all the resources, all the body of knowledge that you want your assistant to use is configured with the assistant. Now let's talk about threads. Threads are basically a way to keep your context about your conversation. So it's got an ID, it's got some messages in it, and it's got some metadata. One thing, you can't list threads in a assistant because that's just a security thing, right? It may be security through obscurity, but it's still, the idea is I shouldn't be able to go find another person's conversation. I have to have my thread ID for my own conversation, and someone else can have their own conversation. It's going to have its own thread ID. How do I create a thread? In the code, all I do is I got this function that's called create thread. I know I'm being very original in my naming convention. And what I do is I grab the OpenAPI endpoint. Remember, this is something I have in my configuration screen. And it's always the base, right? So it's Azure, OpenAI, blah, blah, blah. And then I just add OpenAI/threads, and I give it the API version that I want. The API version is stored as a constant in my code. Maybe I should make it a configurable thing, but it doesn't update that often. And then, like every good JSON post body, I tell it the content type that I want to send, and I give it the API key. And then I say, string it by the message that I want to send, right? Well, actually, in this case, there's no message. This is just a thread. So what I could do, though, is I could actually send additional information. I create a new thread. I could start a thread with a message in it, or I could give additional instructions or things like that. And then what I do is I just post a message. And again, a post method is usually to create things. So this is going to, even though I'm going to slash OpenAI/threads, it's actually creating a thread with the information I've sent. Now, once I've created the thread, I can give it messages. And messages are the individual things that are going back and forth. So again, I always use the thread ID that I just created, and I pass it a role. I can say this is coming from the user, or the assistant usually will send me a message back that says, hey, this is coming from the assistant. And then each message will have some content. It may have some file and some files in it, and it may have some metadata. And I did not demonstrate attaching file in this example, but maybe another demo will do that. All right, so to create a message, guess what? It's the exact same approach, except the URL here is I go to the thread that I just created. So I go threads/thread ID/messages. Again, like usual, I pass the JSON and everything, but then all I need to do is I say, I'm the user. I'm sending you this message that the user has just typed, and I hit post. So user, message, and then post it. Now, the messages can have different structures, right? The simplest one is here, role and content. But the content in this case is always going to be text. Now, there are some cool things that are coming up, and it may or may not be enabled on your tenant, depending on how lucky you are. But you can actually send content, an array of content. So can you look at this image and describe it to me, right? So you could send some text, and you say, this is text, and this is my question. But you could also send it an image with a image URL, and then you just pass it the URL that you want it to be able to access. Now, it needs to be able to access the URL because it's not authenticating on your behalf or anything like that, so it needs to be a publicly accessible URL. If you want to pass an image that is not publicly accessible, you can actually just send a file, or you could use a base64 encoding image. So we're going to skip that, but basically I send it the file, I give it a file that I've uploaded, and I pass it the file ID, and boom. Now, I've created a thread, I've added messages to it. How do I send it to my assistant? I create a run. And a run is basically saying, go nuts. Go with all the information we've discussed so far since the previous run, or since we started. And it's going to have a thread ID, an assistant ID, a model, instructions, tools, and metadata. So this is how I create a run. I just pass it because so far my run has not been associated to the assistant. So this is how I tell it, this is the identity or the personality I want you to use. And this is really poorly documented. Shame on you, Microsoft, but you can actually send the message as a streaming message. All you need to do is to say stream equals true. It's added somewhere as a footnote in the message, in the documentation, but this is how you do that. And then I'll use a Postman kind of event here to show you what happens when you send behind the scenes. This is what's happening. It's sending you a whole bunch of tiny little messages on a single connection that you're able to react to. And that's how you're able to create a really, really cool and animated conversation. Now, when you get the message body in individual parts, you're going to get something called message deltas. And message deltas basically will have each word one by one. So sure, comma, here's blah, 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 right? It's going to just send me the whole conversation, usually on a word by word basis. All right, I'm running out of time, but I'm going to show you one thing. Every single colleague that I've showed this thing has reacted the same way. They're like, yeah, this is really cool, but most importantly, how did you get the cursor to work, right? It's really silly. It's almost embarrassing. So let's take a look. I say, write a story about an animated cursor named Blinky. I'm going to send it, and now it's starting to message. You see there's a little cursor. I slowed it down to 10% speed here. I wish I had the sound effect to show that it's slowed down. If we go at 1%, you'll see that the Blinky cursor is actually animated. It's actually changing color as it's going through. It happens really quickly. And again, we're not trying to, oh, and there's a warrior horse there for some reason. But how I did this is embarrassingly simple. And it's also how ChatGPT does it. I just have my CSS. And in my CSS, I basically say, look, anything that is streaming. So when I start streaming, I set the class of my div tag to be streaming. And I say any paragraph, any unordered list item, any ordered list item that is the last thing in that div after the last thing. So after the last paragraph, after the last bullet, insert this content. And because I'm lazy, I just kind of use a character that shows a round circle. And then I put all the padding and all that stuff and the theming. But this is the key here, is I'm actually saying use an animation called blink. And I say do it infinitely and do it at a rate of 0.9 seconds. Now, the animation is also in my CSS. And all the animation is doing is it's saying, I'm going to go from 1% like fully opaque. I'm going to go halfway to partially opaque, and I'm going to go back to fully opaque again. And that's what this is doing here. Now, the one thing we have to be really careful about when we do any sort of animation is that animation can cause accessibility issues. There are some people, and even some people on this call, who might even get motion sick if there's too much animation on a screen. So one trick, when you create your CSS is to just add a media query. You don't have to write any code as long as you don't consider CSS code. In your CSS, you just say @media prefers reduced motion, and the value is reduce. Then you just change the animation. In this case, I tell it don't animate. You could do an animation if it's just not a repeated animation. That's usually fine. But that's really how we do this. Now, the rest of this presentation was really about showing you how to do the voice and the transcription, but we already got a really cool version of this, so I will skip straight to the end. All right, so this is my web part. It's going to be available in the SPFx web part repository. For more information, you can go to these URLs right here. Back to you, David.
Awesome, Hugo. Very, very cool stuff. I think everybody is loving it between you and Chris today, what you've showed. Really, really cool use. They tie in together so nicely, even though Chris stole most of your time. You guys are just such a great pair. So excellent. Thank you both. All right, everybody. Yep, that's right. We're going to show them the love. Let's wrap this call up. We'd love to get some feedback from you about the call, so please let us know if we're continuing to do things that you like. If you got some suggestions that are constructive, please let us know as well. You can do that by going to aka.ms/community/call/feedback. We'll put the links in the chat. And then, of course, we also would love to have you join our Discord. We've got over 2,200 members in there, so you can be cool and with the cool kids, and your kids will be jealous. They'll be like, Mom and Dad's in Discord? Oh, my God, I got the coolest parents ever. So get in there. It's absolutely free, aka.ms/community/Discord. The recording will be available in 24 hours or less on that Microsoft Community Learning YouTube channel. If you see in Teams saying that the video is ready for download, it is not. You can't access it unless you're in that tenant. So the best way is to go to ak.ms/community/videos or YouTube, and you will be able to subscribe and be alerted as soon as that video drops, which will be in less than 24 hours. You can also follow us on Twitter at Microsoft365Dev or at M365PNP. Our next Viva Connections SharePoint Framework call will be September 5th. We'll be well into September by then in 2 weeks. The next M365 Power Platform, 1 week from today, minus an hour, August 29th at 7 a.m. Pacific. Thank you all for attending. You are the best part of our community. We would not have these opportunities to showcase all these cool things without the passion that you all show and the willingness to collaborate. So we love you. Thank you so much. Have a great, wonderful rest of your week and a wonderful weekend. Woo! Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Wowee! Bye-bye.
Wowee!